This program is rated PG. It contains themes and scenes which may not be suitable for very young audiences. Parental guidance is advised.
We're working to connect a region of over 600 million bridges between our lands.
Hello and welcome to ASEAN in Focus. I'm Maricar Velasco, delivering to you the latest news in and around the ASEAN region. On today's headlines, the Interagency Task Force for the Management of Emerging Infectious Disease in the Philippines has resolved to adopt social distancing measures to fight the spread of COVID-19. Relatives and a spokesman for the lawyers representing victims of the downing of Malaysia Airlines flight MH17 in 2014 call for justice at the end of the first day of the hearing in the first trial of the crash, which opened in Netherlands. Singapore-based analyst Margaret Yang says the tumble in the oil price is triggering panic across financial markets and that the timing for the world economy couldn't be worse. Well-wishers will not be allowed to touch Philippines President Rodrigo Duterte under new measures announced Monday by his security detail as the deadly coronavirus spread in the country. At 74, Duterte is in a vulnerable age group for the virus, which has proven particularly harmful in older people with pre-existing conditions. The PSG, or Presidential Security Group, will implement a no-touch policy between the president and the public, Group Commander Jesus Durante said in a statement. He added that personalities who are expected to get near him will be thoroughly screened. Philippine authorities announced Monday that the virus is spreading locally and that the testing has revealed 20 cases since February, half of them diagnosed on Monday. President Duterte is the oldest person elected as the country's president. Meanwhile, he has issued a proclamation formally declaring a state of public health emergency throughout the Philippines.
Well, the declaration proceeds from the law, which is the RA 1132, which is the Disease Notifiable Act. This is reporting of diseases of local and international public health concern. And the trigger for the DOH to endorse to the President to declare a state of public health emergency is the one localized transmission as reported last Saturday. Okay, so the objectives are clear. There are about 6 for which this declaration is being made.
Under the proclamation, all government agencies and LGUs are tasked to give full assistance and cooperation and mobilize the necessary resources to undertake critical, urgent, and appropriate response and measures in a timely manner to curtail and eliminate the COVID-19 threat. Meanwhile, Duque rejected claims that warm temperatures will slow the COVID-19 outbreak, but noted it's difficult to neutralize the virus when there is low humidity and low temperature.
Ang masasabi lang po natin from the literature, from the journals that we read, that the virus is very difficult to inactivate when the temperature is low and when the humidity is dry. Okay, when there is low humidity and low temperature, it's very difficult to neutralize the virus. I have yet to see. Perhaps Dr. Rabi might want to add to that information. And if that is true, then we should rejoice that summer is just around the corner. It will mean more sweat, more perspiration, but we don't mind. The trade-off is well worth it.
That this virus will disappear like the SARS virus with increasing ambient temperatures. What we are seeing more recently is not supportive of that. We are seeing continuing transmission in very tropical countries like Singapore, Malaysia. And so the evidence we have at this point of time is not supportive. But having said that, certainly how long the virus survives in warmer countries with high humidity is much less than in colder, low humid circumstances. So this could work in favor of lower levels of transmission, but there are other factors such as overcrowding, which could work negatively and contribute to increased transmission. So the actual outcome will depend on each country's situation. And that's why we continue to urge countries to identify cases, follow up cases, and define as early as possible clusters.
The Interagency Task Force for the Management of Emerging Infectious Disease has resolved to adopt social distancing measures to fight the spread of COVID-19. In a resolution it issued late Monday, the task force recommended a temporary prohibition of planned and spontaneous mass gatherings where the number of people attending could strain the planning and response resources of the community hosting the events. Employers in the private sector and the Civil Service Commission are hereby encouraged to implement alternative working arrangements to impose social distancing between and among employees. The task force also recommended that classes in all levels be suspended in Metro Manila from March 10 to 14, provided that all students continue to fulfill their educational requirements these days. The concerned local government units shall be responsible for implementing measures to ensure that students remain in their homes during said duration, the resolution read. As the Philippines recorded 24 confirmed cases of COVID-19, several events have been canceled. Among the events suspended include all Department of Education activities which require travel and congregation of schools, division, and regions. Only the ongoing National Schools Press Conference and the National Festival of Talents proceeded with strict observance of the health guidelines against COVID-19. The Marikina city government, this year's host of Palarong Pambansa, has decided to postpone the games. The National Collegiate Athletic Association also suspended its games following the Department of Health's declaration of Red Alert Sub-Level 1. Vietnamese authorities vowed Monday to punish anyone concealing sickness after 13 people caught the deadly new coronavirus on a flight to Hanoi, sparking lockdowns and panic buying in the capital. The Southeast Asian country had previously reported only 16 cases of the virus despite bordering China, but a cluster of infections was discovered at the weekend among 201 passengers on a Vietnam Airlines flight from Britain. Vietnam's health ministry said the group were in quarantine Monday and recovering with the hospital they were held in place on lockdown, along with several houses and hotels in Hanoi where they had stayed. Vietnam Prime Minister Nguyen Xuan Phuc vowed Monday to duly punish those who failed to disclose a coronavirus diagnosis, according to state media. Several sports and cultural events have been canceled across the nation, but Vietnam's inaugural Formula One race is still set to go ahead on April 5 in Hanoi. Singapore will allow a cruise ship carrying about 2,000 people to dock after it was barred by Malaysia and Thailand over coronavirus fears, officials said Monday. The Costa Fortuna was turned away from the Thai holiday island of Phuket and the Malaysian state of Penang in recent days, despite having no suspected virus cases among its passengers and crew. But the ship, carrying dozens of people from Italy, which has been hard hit by the virus, will be allowed to dock at its home port of Singapore Tuesday as scheduled. The Singapore's Port Authority and Tourism Board said a doctor on board will check passengers and crew before they disembark, and everyone will undergo temperature screenings before entering Singapore. The vessel, which set sail from Singapore on Tuesday last week, said no passengers were feverish or had other symptoms. Thailand refused to let the ship dock due to restrictions on people with recent travel history to Italy, while Malaysia has barred all cruise ships from the country's ports because of coronavirus fears. Italy has been hard hit by the virus with 366 fatalities, the most deaths from the disease of any country outside China, where the outbreak began in December. The Indonesian government has confirmed 13 new cases of COVID-19 in the country. That brings the country's total number of cases to 19. In a report in the Jakarta Post, the Secretary of the Health Ministry's Disease Control and Prevention Directorate General Ahmad Yuryanto said 2 of the 13 new cases were foreign nationals. 7 of the cases were also identified as imported cases. That means the patients likely got the illness outside of Indonesia.
It's time to take one step further and face the impossible. Time to search the unknown and fight for the truth. Time to overcome boundaries and connect the world. It's time for DW News.
Events happen around us all the time, in our community, in our country, around the world. Events that affect people, move communities, or simply inspire us. Interesting events that people need to know. In these interesting times, we continue to be a competent partner in delivering news about these events. Fast, accurate, balanced, eagle news, because we live in interesting times.
Welcome back. The tourist sites Cambodia, normally crowded with Chinese tour groups, have been relatively deserted as a result of the coronavirus outbreak. Tourists who do come are getting to experience the temples amid usual serenity, but it has also left a hole in a tourism industry heavily reliant on Chinese visitors.
Brom khlang bộ ấy được tha bật lôi dương che tại rọt bàn nó bên chân dương thở ca trai chi phiệp ro ngày chân ta dương đăng bật to từ một bàn đó ca na tiệt.
ឥឡូវនេះមគ្គុទ្ទេសក៍ភាសាចិនដែលកំពុងតែរងការបាត់បង់ឱកាសការងារអ្នកខ្លះគឺគេបានត្រឡប់ទៅរាជធានីភ្នំពេញអ្នកខ្លះគេទៅរកការងារជាបណ្ដោះអាសន្ននៅតំបន់ផ្សេងៗហើយអ្នកខ្លះក៏គេត្រឡប់ទៅស្រុកកំណើតដើម្បីសម្រាកសិន
Britain's biggest retailer Tesco said Monday that it has agreed to sell its businesses in Thailand and Malaysia the Thai conglomerate CP Group for 8.0 billion euros or $10.4 billion or 9.2 billion euros. Outgoing Chief Executive Dave Lewis in a statement said this sale releases material value and allows us to further simplify and focus the businesses as well as return significant value to shareholders. Tesco added that the divestment will also slash debts and streamline the group, enabling a stronger focus on UK, Irish and Central European activities. The deal is set to complete in the second half of this year. The announcement comes as Dave Lewis prepares to step down in 2020, having overseen a major overhaul at Tesco during his 5 years at the helm, axing thousands of jobs as part of a massive cost-cutting program. Lewis is leaving for personal reasons and will be replaced by Walgreens Boots Alliance executive Ken Murphy. Relatives and a spokesman for the lawmakers or lawyers representing victims of the downing of Malaysia Airlines flight MH17 in 2014 called for justice at the end of the first day of the hearing in the first trial of the crash, which opened in the Netherlands Monday. The suspects, 3 Russians and a Ukrainian, were not present in the dock of the high security court, but judges ruled that the hearing could continue in their absence.
Well, I think that the district attorney would not start this trial without thinking that they can give the proof. But let's see. I mean, this is a procedure that can take 2, 3, 4 or maybe even 5 years, depending on all the evidence that has to be delivered and the request of the defendants and the defense line of the lawyers of the defendants. I represent myself 72 of the family members, and I'm in this job for 32 years, but it took me quite some effort to control my emotions, to be honest.
The reading of the names was beautiful and emotional and very, very impressive, and I think also very important for the rest of the hearings. For us, it's very important that an independent Dutch court will investigate all the presented evidence and make their own judgment. And you know, it's an independent court. That's for us very important that they will make a verdict, and we don't know when. And we also don't know what this verdict will be. So we have to wait. The start of this trial is very, very, very important for all relatives. We want justice be served, and we want to know all details about downing flight MH17.
Dutch prosecutors last year charged Russian nationals Igor Kirgin, Sergei Dubinsky, Oleg Pulatov, and Ukrainian citizen Leonid Karchenko over the tragedy. Prosecutors say all 4 were linked to pro-Russian separatists on whose territory the plane's wreckage fell near the start of Ukraine's bitter civil war. They argue the men were instrumental in bringing the BOK missile system to Ukraine from its original base in Russia, even if they did not pull the trigger. Judges ruled that proceedings could go ahead in absentia against Gherkin, Dubinsky, and Karchenko, as Dutch, Russian, and Ukrainian authorities had tried to contact them by post and by electronic media.
For me, it's most important thing, will there be enough evidence that the judge can make a conclusion? Guilty. If that's the case, then I will be satisfied.
And for us it is exciting because now finally all the evidence that we have collected, a judge can look at it, can analyze it and make a ruling about it. So yes, a very exciting day for us, the JIT, but also for the next of kin. Well, let's focus for now on the 4 suspects for this trial, but the investigation is still going on because we want to expose the complete chain of command from the crew of the Buck Taylor, as we explained, up till the people responsible, the people that gave the order for the Buck Taylor.
Russia has long denied any involvement in the downing of MH17 and has offered a series of alternative explanations for the plane's downing. Moscow again on Friday accused the Netherlands of a crude attempt to put pressure on the court and said it was trying to fill the gaps in the evidence. But Dutch Prime Minister Mark Rutte said on Friday that the trial was being held in full independence and was a very important step to get to the truth and to find justice for the victims and their relatives. More than two-thirds of the victims, 196 in total, were Dutch. Equity markets collapsed Monday as a rapidly spreading coronavirus fans fears for the global economy, while a crash in oil prices added to the panic, with energy firms taking a hammering and wiping hundreds of billions off valuations. Singapore-based analyst Margaret Yang says the tumble in the oil price is triggering panic across financial markets and that the timing for the world economy couldn't be worse.
Yeah, I think the timing couldn't be worse. So we are already in a worst sentiment ever since the subprime crisis. Consumer confidence was dampened, and the global growth outlook has been cut a few times because of the trade war last year and COVID-19 this year. And right now we are having a huge oversupply problem, and Russia and OPEC, they couldn't reach a consensus in cutting the output. So it's like all the bad news are coming in at the same time.
As the deadly disease claims more lives around the world, dealers are shedding riskier assets for safe havens, sending gold and the yen surging and pushing U.S. Treasury yields to record lows. While governments and central banks have unleashed or prepared stimulus measures, the spread of COVID-19 is putting a huge strain on economies and stoking concerns of a worldwide recession. Trading floors were a sea of red, with Tokyo and Manila plunging more than 5%. While Hong Kong dived 3.7%, Sydney shed 7.3%. Mumbai, Singapore, Seoul and Jakarta were more than 4% down. Shanghai shed 3% and Bangkok gave up 6.8%. Saudi equities tanked more than 9%, with oil titan Aramco losing 10%. Dubai and Kuwait sank a similar amount, while Abu Dhabi equities were almost 8% down. The losses followed sharp falls in Europe and Wall Street on Friday. Driving the declines was a ferocious sell-off in the oil markets, sparked by top exporter Saudi Arabia slashing prices, in some cases to unprecedented levels, after a bust-up with Russia over production.
So this crude oil price tumbling is causing a panic across all the financial markets. We saw that the US S&P futures, the FTSE 100 futures, all gapping down hugely this morning, and a circuit breaker was triggered in all these markets. OPEC and Russia, these two major oil producers, they can't agree to cut down the output in order to shore up price. Instead, they choose to do the opposite. Saudi Arabia has decided to increase output in a time when there are so much of inventory out there and not much of demand. So this will definitely lead to an oversupply situation in the oil market, and the price can fall even more from here. So the silver lining could be that when the price falls to an extremely low level, that will force Russia to rethink about this decision and come back to the negotiation table. And if OPEC Plus, they can have a meaningful cut in output, then oil price can expect a V-shaped kind of rebound from here. So when many consumers, they start to tighten up the belt and cut back spending, corporate earnings will fall. And when corporate earnings fall, the market will go down a lot, even more from here. So this will kick off a negative feedback loop. So we need to stop this panic selling as soon as possible before we pass the point of no return.
Here at their seats, and that closed session actually.
And that is the latest news in the Southeast Asian nations. Stay updated about the ASEAN region. I'm Maricar Velasco, and I am one with 25.